So I blinked, and Alex Lifeson and his mates in Envy of None are already on their second album. Where does the time go? So, what of the new one? Sophomore slump? Or finding their groove as a band? What new tricks do they show us, and do any of them happen to include Alex lighting the world on fire with a blistering solo? Well, you'll get an answer or two to those questions, and get to hear my reaction to it right after this. Hey Prog Noggins, Dave here, and this is Bleeding Edge with your weekly album review. Thank you so much for joining me. As mentioned, Envy of None, that band post-Rush project featuring Alex Lifeson on guitar, of course, has a new album out. It's called Stygian Waves. It's their second album, so where does that find the band in their growth and their development? Well, we're about to find out. So the band is made up, again, of Alex Lifeson, who, of course, plays guitar, mandala, which, if you don't already know, here's your vocabulary word for the day. Mandala is to mandolin as viola is to violin. There you go. And he's also credited with, and probably something else. And I don't know if that's Alex being mysterious or expressing a bit of impaired memory. I don't know. Also included is Andy Curran on bass, fretless and fretted types, guitar and keys. Maya Wynn is vocals and synths, and Alf Annabellini, I hope I got that right, guitar, slide guitar, and keys. And of course, they include a bunch of guest drummers, including David Quinton Steinberg, Ty Dennis, Joe Vitale, I think, and Randy Cook. Meanwhile, the whole thing is recorded and mixed by Alf, and no, not Alf, but Alf Annabellini. I know, as soon as I say Alf, boom. That's what comes to mind. Mastered by Harry Hess. And I don't know. What I read did not include a specific producer credit. So I'm just wondering, any chance that probably something else for Alex means he produced? Or are they just, once again, doing as they did the first album, and the band simply is not necessarily getting a specific credit, but they are the ones who handled the production? The world may never know. I don't know, but it does make me curious exactly what probably something else means. I wonder what it does mean. All right, so you got 11 songs in a brisk 43 minutes. This is not a Rush album. This is not really what you call a prog album. We're going to get into that in a minute, but before we do the full breakdown, just a couple of the usual reminders. Don't forget to please like the review if you enjoy it. If you want to keep up with the other stuff I will be doing, my reviews, my prog-related stuff, we got a new thing out this week called Archive Deep Dive, featuring more obscure prog and prog-adjacent work. Hit that subscribe button and hit the bell if you feel like being notified every time I upload something. Now, how this all works, my methodology, 4 categories: intellectual, innovation, technical, emotional. Scored each of them on a 1 to 5. We get an average from that. That is my raw score, and depending on how that raw score does or does not reflect my personal experience of the album, I may add a personal enjoyment modifier or subtract a personal enjoyment modifier. Works both ways. All right, starting off as always, intellectual. Now, this is an album that I came into not knowing exactly what to expect. I had only really given a brief look at the first album. So this is the first one where I really decided, you know what, I really want to know what Alex is doing with this new band, and I really want to know what they're about. So that's why I decided to review it. I was impressed a bit. Very introspective lyrics, and they do a really good job with getting a lot out of few words, minimal words, economy of expression, I guess is what I'd like to call it. And that's especially strong in the first couple of songs, and then more towards the end of the album. In the middle, things seem to get a little less deep, but the level of lyrical depth does vary a bit from song to song, and there's some that are just deeply introspective, including the lead-off track, Not Dead Yet. Feels like it's either Alex's defiant shout at the world that he's not done.
I'm not dead.
Yeah,
He says he's not dead.
Yes, he is.
I'm not.
Or, I don't know, perhaps, honestly, it could be him having an epiphany of like, you know what, it's not over. I still got more to share with the world, and I still got more I want to do, which kind of makes me wonder a little bit. Not knowing how much he did or did not contribute to the lyrics, I understand correctly, Maya pretty much wrote them all, but doesn't mean he didn't consult or work with her. There's a word I'm looking for, and I'm not getting it. Damn it. But I don't know. Perhaps in some way, that kind of epiphany might be contributing to his, as I've heard recently expressed, interest in touring again with this band. That would be awesome. We'll see. Also, the second track, The Story, seems to be examining an individual's frustration with their own pattern of self-sabotage. That's pretty damn introspective right there. And along with it, which makes me wonder how personal it is, that Maya really delivers a vocal that's really expresses some ethereal vulnerability and earnestness, reminiscent of Amy Mann. That's in the middle of the song. I remember thinking, who was this reminding me of? And the tone and the way the song was sung and the phrasing. Amy Mann came to mind, which was all the more interesting when literally after that hit me, like seconds later, Alex is delivering a solo that, to me, in tone, sounds like it was stolen from Hold Your Fire. I have no clue if any of that's intentional or not. Maybe I'm the only one in the world that hears that song and thinks any of that, but it was a pretty cool tune, and I feel like the emotion within the lyrics was conveyed really, really nicely by Maya's performance. And then there's the moody standout Clouds, which reflects upon the struggles of someone who's kind of verging on the edge of deep depression or perhaps falling into the trap of a toxic relationship, or potentially both. Those two things sometimes go together. So I'm not sure there. And then you get some others in the middle of the album that are comparatively superficial, like Thrill of the Chase is a laconically funky song. If you can be laconic and funky at the same time, I think you can. But seems to be fairly standard on the prowl for love type of song, which is not something that's necessarily uncommon in the 80s, as I recall, a point which will make more sense when we get into the innovation section of things. And then Under the Stars has some really cool production in it, but the lyrics come across as a generally straight-ahead love song. Hey, you, me, let's be together kind of thing. Not bad, but not deep. So there's a bit of up and down in that, but overall, there's a lot of interesting reflections upon human relationships, both the ones we have with others and the ones we have with ourselves, that I found really cool. And all of it written in a manner that leaves a lot open for personal interpretation. And I dig that level of ambiguity there, where you can hear something and you go, I'm getting the full message here of some way, though I'm not 100% certain I'm hearing it right. But I can fit it in with something that means something to me. And I like that. I'd certainly call it a solidly intelligent album, not super intellectual, though some of the more simplistic songs might drag it back a little bit. I did settle on a 4 for this score. Moving on to innovative. Now, this to me is a bit of a throwback album. And I think a little bit even more so than the last one, than their first one. But it still features that bit of industrial sheen, that industrial grit over everything. So it never feels dated to me. And I like the combination. Compared to their debut, the sound really isn't changed all that much. More that I feel like the overall production is a little more polished and a little bit, more adventurous in some ways. There's an extra lushness to it that I don't think was quite in the first album. The first album to me felt a bit minimalistic. This one I think feels like they are stretching their legs a little more. Perhaps that's the group getting more comfortable within their working relationships. Perhaps that's them just trying some different things. Also, at times pulled me back because my mind goes to that lacking of a clear producer credit. And then I'm wondering, okay, exactly how was this particular responsibility within the band delegated? Who overall made the decisions about how things sounded and all that? Was that Alf when he was doing the recording and engineering? Is a lot of that attributed to Harry Hess? I don't know. I just ponder it because there are aspects of the production that at times put me in mind of the Fix, especially kind of mid-'80s Fix. Maybe not the first album, but Maybe not the second album, but somewhere around there. Now, of course, they were produced over the course of several albums. I think their first 3 or 4 by Rupert Hine, producer extraordinaire and avant-garde artist in his own right, who then later worked with Rush on Presto and Roll the Bones. So there's that connection where, being that Rush usually had a co-producer credit on all their albums, along with that other individual who worked with them, I don't know. Did Alex pick up some techniques, some tricks from Rupert during their time together that he employed on this album that would explain me hearing some of the fix elements in that? I don't know. I like it because I loved the fix and still do love the fix. I'm sorry to get to see them play again last time, but man, they are sounding great when they tour. If you like the fix at all and you get a chance to see them, go see them. The guys have not lost a step even a little bit. Meanwhile, again, not so much has changed from the first album, though, overall. A little bit additional creativity and polish in the production, maybe a little more confidence in the group that comes across as they're being a little looser, more relaxed, a little less mechanical. I don't know. Interesting side note as well. This will be the second side note in this section. A lot of this music at times for me is reminiscent of a little Canadian band called Jackalope, which was a project by producer David Ogilvy with some help from somebody you might know by the name of Trent Reznor to make an industrial pop band about, almost 20 years ago at this point in time. Interesting note, Alex guest starred on their second album, Born 4, number 4, which is well worth checking out, both for the great music and, interestingly, the similarities between what they were doing and what Envy of None is doing now. It is definitely worth a listen. Well, anyway, in the end, the first album in and of itself, obviously, was a departure for Alex. I'm not familiar enough with the others to say how much of it was them stretching their legs, but it definitely was different for him. But sorry, dude, no such credit on the second trip. So have to score this a 3. It's not to say I didn't perceive any growth this time around, just that I didn't feel like it really was that much of a difference compared to what they did and what's going on in the world. But it's got some definitely cool stuff, and there's some growth to be seen there. All right, moving on to technical. This, if you haven't picked up on it from what I'm saying yet, this music isn't about virtuosity. This is not about big, grand, bombastic music. This is primarily about arrangement and production. And on those measures, if you haven't picked up on what I'm saying so far, again, it scores high. They can't always be people relying on a tornado of notes or extended compositions or whatever. And this is not a prog album. Again, economy of expression, economy of composition is key. There's no wasted notes. They are finding ways to express a lot with a little bit. Each note or two has got to be worth about 4 or 5 or 6 in the prog world. So that then also puts a little bit more emphasis on composition and how the arrangements are put together. And as noted, the lyrics, kind of the same thing with that economy of expression. As noted, the production is great. The production is really, really nice. It's polished. They rely heavily on subtlety and some little musical Easter eggs throughout the songs, little flourishes and details that are really there and reward close attention. And at times, there's a little bit of wall of sound going on there, and it gets pretty lush without it feeling bombastic. They know the area they have sketched out for themselves, and they stay with that. And it's an excellent example of how stuttering all over the place. Interesting example of how solid arrangements can make few notes sound like a lot more notes, and few instruments comparatively sound like a lot of instruments. It's sparse without feeling minimalistic, and I felt like the first album tended a little bit more towards minimalism, and this one, they colored with the full box of 64 this time around by comparison to the last one, or at least half the box. First one feels like they stuck with the 8 box. I have no idea where the hell that metaphor just came from, but bear with me. So it was interesting because it's really good as background music, and I'll admit the first couple of times I listened to it, it was more while my mind was engaged in other things and I was getting a feel for it. it was sitting down, putting the headphones on, putting the lyrics in front of me that really pulled out the nice details in this one that really made it worth my time doing that. So between the production and the subtleties of the arrangement that make a little bit seem like more, they're doing more with less, as one would say in the business world. Within the context of this style of music, I'm giving them a 4. Meanwhile, we get to emotional, always the last category. There's a lot of, as I've noted, cool stuff to enjoy here. Some of the darker moments, of course, connected for me as always. As I mentioned, there's a bit of this throwback feel to the album that reminds me a lot of that early 80s period of new wave, the Cars and the Fix, and maybe a bit of Ultravox in there, things like that. But I think more the Cars, because there's more this feel of less avant-garde, but still on the edge of cool, like good pop sensibilities, some nice grooves, more workmanlike than complex, a little bit mechanical and straightforward rhythms, and yet at the same time, still some cool stuff there. And the edit details, especially in the production and the arrangement, blends in that Fix influence. And then on occasion or two, there's some nice, cool grooves going on there that just a pinch of Steely Dan. And all of that with this nice modern industrial edge that keeps it from ever sounding dated. And it's a pretty cool composition for me, or combination, should I say. I like it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I dig that. But let's also note that as much as I like those things, with the exception of the Fix, the other bands I mentioned, I always enjoy, but I wouldn't say they ever brought a great emotional reaction from me. There was so much, especially in the early part of the age of the Cars, like as soon as it came on, this is cool, let's listen to this. I didn't get all pumped up for it, but I always enjoyed it. Steely Dan, it's a band that's more to groove to and chill to in many ways than to get pumped up to. A couple of songs here and there maybe rock a little bit that I really enjoy. But overall, these are not the things that necessarily charge me up. The Fix could do that a bit for me, but then again, they were one of my favorite bands in the 80s, one of my top 3 favorite bands. But that depended on the song for them too. Some of the stuff was more nice and groove-oriented stuff that just was really nice and chill and enjoyable, but not necessarily rock the world kind of stuff. So that kind of music didn't necessarily evoke strong emotional responses in me, but it wasn't that kind of music, no, that was ever meant to be that kind of music, and I don't know that this is either. So as much as I'm digging them hitting my nostalgia button and enjoying the grooves of this album, I am going to go with a 3 for emotional, which I'm sure is no surprise to anybody out there that's watched even 2 of my my reviews so far. All right, so let's take a quick review. Intellectual 4, innovation 3, technical 4, emotional 3. It's pretty easy math. That gets us an average of 3.5, which is our raw score here. Now, quick additional thoughts. So, no, I know. If anybody's gotten this far and gone, Dave, what the hell are you doing? I know it's not prog. And I'm here because I wanted to get a good, clear picture of what Alex has been doing in his post-Rush years. And as I noted, I mostly overlooked the first album. I gave it only a cursory listen, didn't really jump out at me. And again, maybe it's like this album where you really need to pay attention and listen to it. Really pay attention and listen to it to maybe get the best out of it. Ultimately, though, I'm glad I checked this one out because it scratched the itch I wasn't even aware of.